Amen. This week we're entering into our week of prayer and fasting. It starts tonight at 6:30. The youth are going to kick us off, leading us in worship and message and prayer. All week there's going to be a theme where we're praying intentionally that God would do it again. We're going to be talking about different moves of God, revivals and reformations. Saying, God, we believe that you want to move here and you want to move now. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. That we're not praying for something far off. We believe and have conviction that God is calling us into something right now. We're going to get to hear incredible moves of God through the Moravians, through John G. Lake and the Healing Revival in Spokane, through the Welsh Revival, through the First Great Awakening. We're going to get to celebrate what God's done, but then pray, God, would you do it again here and now in Burien? Yes. He desires to pour himself out, but he desires to pour himself out through his sons and daughters, through his people, his beloved. He desires to partner with his beloved. I want to encourage you to do two things this week as we fast and as we pray and seek the Lord. One is I want you to turn off all the media. Take social media off your phone, turn the TV off, get rid of Netflix and all the streaming, cut out the news, anything that's just media that can just become noise. I encourage you to set aside for this week. It's amazing how much can clog our mind from hearing the Lord. Just noise of all the other things the world is pulling at us for. All the other things the enemy would love to stir in our hearts, the fear or the anxiousness or whatever it might be. I encourage you this week to unplug. That as we press in and we sit at the feet of Jesus and we look to hear his voice, that we wouldn't have all those other distractions. That's number one. And number two, I want you to seek the Lord on what would you have me fast from a tangible food perspective. How would you call me to fast? We're not going to him to try and do the religious thing so that he might do something for us. We want to seek him, and we want to be people that are raised up and live by the Spirit inside of us. And there's something about giving up even our most basic needs like food that stirs our spirit to rise up and live by the Spirit. That we take that time that we would otherwise be cooking food or eating meals and we divert that time to say, I'm going to sit at the feet of Jesus. Desiring that he would set our hearts on fire, desiring that he would pour out his Spirit among us, desiring that we would be attentive to his voice. This week as we pray and seek what he has for us, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting year. That we get to step into something that the Father has for us. Collectively as a congregation, we get to step in and partner with him in things that he's destined us for. There's nothing like walking in the will of God for our lives. There's nothing like it. There's no cost too great. Anthony used to say that. There's no cost too great to walk in the will of God for your life. But as we come and we gather tonight, don't come to be entertained. It's not going to be a very showy event each night. We're going to come and each night we're going to spend time in worship. We're going to come and each night there's going to be a speaker that's going to speak on different ways that God is moving and desires to move among us, different ways that he's moved in the past. We're going to spend time praying and interceding. This is an opportunity for us to grow. I said a few weeks ago that if prayer was our lower body workout, we've been skipping lower body for a long time as the body of Christ in America. This is an opportunity to go and learn how to become a man or woman of prayer, a man or woman of intercession. Jesus called the temple, his Father's house, a house of prayer. He could have called it a lot of things, but he said, this is a house of prayer. And this is an opportunity for us to come together and pray and learn to flex that muscle of intercession. Then at 8:30, when the service, the official program finishes, there'll be 2 hours from 8:30 to 10:30 to stay and linger, just like Joseph talked about last week, Joshua lingering in the tent. That was fire. I watched that afterwards. That was fire. But being people who are willing to sit at his feet, to wait, to linger, to press in, to hold on like Jacob and wrestle until we receive the blessing of the Lord, till we hear his voice, till we pray through. So I encourage you, block off your schedule. Don't just let this week be one that you just kind of slips by. Unplug. Intentionally fast. Seek the Lord. Sit at his feet, that we'd hear his voice and respond to what he's calling us in this new year. We've been going through this series called Wartime, talking about how this is a time of war. It's not peacetime. We operate differently in peacetime than wartime. If I were to be really blunt, I'd say if you're looking for a real gentle and, how do I say this? We won't go too far down that road. If you're looking for a real easy pep talk each Sunday so that you can go and feel good and come back the next week, you're probably not at the right church. We're on a mission that we believe God's given us, not a vision that we've tried to construct ourselves, but a mission that we believe God has in store for us if we just say yes, if we just respond to what he has for us. And it means there's a cost that we're going to talk about today. But the first week we talked about the epicenter. God's calling us to the epicenter of our city, which we believe is Highline High School. That we have a call on ourselves as a church for the restoration of family. And the one place that he's called us to go deep in outreach this year is Highline High School. We can be an inch deep in 100 different places, but God's calling us to be a mile deep in one place. It might seem extreme. It might seem like, well, what about all the other stuff? God cares about all the other stuff, but there's one place that he's given us responsibility this year. It's not that he doesn't care about the other things, but we actually have an opportunity to be intentional and go deep in the place that God's called us to go deep in our city. The second week, we talked about the marching orders. When the Israelites were entering into the promised land, they came out of Egypt. God had released them and set them free from the most powerful nation in the world. They walked through that water, and it crushed their enemies behind them. It was different when they entered into the promised land. In the promised land, their enemies weren't crushed behind them in the Jordan River. Their enemies were actually fortified in cities in front of them. And God was saying it's wartime. The commander of the Lord's army came and visited Joshua, and his sword was drawn. He said, it's wartime. Just like it is in this city today. And there are marching orders, just like he gave distinct marching orders for Jericho that were different than Ai, as we talked about. There are distinct marching orders, distinct instruction that God's giving us toward Highline High School. I believe Highline High School is our Jericho. It's where he's calling us to start. It's the first place that he's calling us to take for his kingdom. And I believe that there's going to be an ongoing partnership where God's going to give instruction, and it might not always look the same, just as it differed in some of these different cities that they took in the Promised Land. But we get to be with him in the process of stepping into the inheritance that he paid for. Remember, Jesus paid it all on the cross. But the enemy will occupy whatever we don't stand in when it comes to the authority of Christ. If we're not willing to occupy what Jesus paid for on the cross, the enemy will gladly hijack that territory. But we have the opportunity to go with the full backing, the full authority of Christ, and usher his kingdom come, his will be done on earth as it is in heaven, at Highline High School as it is in heaven, in Burien as it is in heaven. We also talked a couple weeks ago about the structure of the teams, the marching orders that we believe he's given us. How do we go about this, God? We've asked plenty of questions over the last several months as we've been seeking the Lord as an elder team, as a leadership team. God, how would you have us go about this? There's plenty of different campus ministries all across the United States. How would you call us to go after this school in our city? And we believe it's important that it's not just a few people serving off to the side, but we're actually going in teams that involve intercession, as well as people going boots on the ground, as well as people that are able to foster family, for families to be restored in the family of God. That in the context of what we're pursuing, it's not just one or the other, but it's actually going and forming teams that'll go and pursue the lost and then bringing them into a family where there's opportunity for restored marriages and inner healing, that anyone that serves in any ministry is tied to the single vision and the mission that God's given us. That collectively we're seeking the Lord on, God, what would you have me do in the broader picture? How would you have me say yes? And where do I need to say no in order to make space for that yes? It's one thing to say yes. It's another thing to guard your yes. Those are different things. We can all say yes. Every one of us in this room can say yes to anything. But it's another thing in order to guard that yes with intentional no's. And as we go into this week of prayer and fasting, my desire is that we would sit before the Lord and ask, what is it you're calling me to say yes to? And in order to protect my yes, what do I need to say no to? That we'd receive our marching orders from him. We'd have the conviction and the calling for what he's called us to. That we know we're called to the place that we're serving and engaged. Makes all the difference when we know we're called. And we'd be willing to say yes and step into that. But this week we're talking about the cost. The cost. There's a cost to following Jesus. There's a cost to pursuing Highline High School. There always has been. We live in a society where costs are constantly rising. We're used to inflation where things just constantly get more expensive. There's no inflation with the cost of following Jesus. You know, it's always been the same bar. It's always been the same bar. And Jesus never watered it down. You know, I love a good bargain. Sierra and I will go shopping. I'm the one that's like calculating all the prices and like, oh, per ounce, this one's going to be better than that one. We love going thrift shopping, and there's just something that feels good about finding a deal, right? I found this $100 pair of jeans for like $17, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but sometimes that seeps into our walk with Christ where we try and dilute the cost of following Jesus. We try and chip away at the cost of following Jesus, thinking maybe we'll get a bargain. Maybe we could walk with Jesus, but not fully. Not pay the full price, but get a discount. You know, even when you work in ministry, there's no employee discount. But today we're going to talk about that cost. And the question we're going to ask is not how can we whittle the cost down, but we're going to ask the question, is Jesus worthy of the cost? Is Jesus worthy of the full price, the full cost? Let's turn for a second to Luke 14. We're going to be there today. We're going to start in verse 25. So verse 25 says, now great crowds accompanied him. And he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. That's a pretty heavy moment. Those are some hard-hitting words. It's similar to John 6, where the crowds are building. It says, great crowds accompanied him. You know what we do when crowds start to amass? When there are big crowds, we start to change our message and say, don't rock the boat. Don't say anything controversial. Don't say anything that could put someone off. And Jesus regularly did the exact opposite. Jesus is probably looking around saying, wow, there's a lot of people here. We better find the ones that really have the heart posture to follow me. Regularly when there are crowds, he throws a wrench in the game. he throws a curveball. He says something hard, which he does right here. He's looking at this great crowd, and he says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. I don't know if by this point, I don't know if the disciples were shocked or if they're just like, well, yeah, this is par for the course now. But it's not what someone would normally say when they're trying to keep as many people in the crowd as possible. Jesus was always willing to push people off the fence out of love for them. The fence is a dangerous place to be. You can be on the fence a long time. He would push people off the fence in order that they would recognize, do I actually want to follow Jesus? Do I actually have the hunger? Am I actually willing to pay the cost of following Jesus? Now, he's not saying, when he says hate mother, father, brother, sister, wife, even your own life, he's not saying that we're supposed to walk around being like, I hate my life. And we cross-reference it with Matthew 10:37, where he says, if anyone loves his father or mother more than me, he's not worthy of me. He's saying, I have to be first. I have to be first. And he's not saying that in the context of being arrogant or proud. He's saying that in the context of being right. It's truth. There is no rival. There is no equal. There is no one like him. He's not being cocky. He's speaking truth. He is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to him. No one comes to the Father except through him. But he's saying, I have to be first. You know, the best way to have a healthy marriage is for both husband and wife to put Jesus first above all else. You start putting your spouse above Jesus, that's bad news. You start putting your kids above Jesus, that's bad news. You start putting society above Jesus, that's bad news. You start putting your schedule above Jesus, that's bad news. Jesus is speaking truth for our sake. The truth is what sets us free. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't try and water it down. He says, it has to be this way. It's the only way to the abundant life that I paid for you to have. I have to be first, above all else. But then he says, if someone's not willing to put me first, he cannot be my disciple. You might read that and be like, well, that doesn't seem very inclusive. Isn't Jesus supposed to be inclusive? Our society has taught us that being inclusive means lowering the bar. What Jesus is saying is, there's a high bar to follow me. But he says, I'll partner with you to that bar. That he would go and he would send us his spirit, that we could live by the spirit and not be confined by the deeds of the body or the flesh, that we could actually live free and redeemed, that we could die to ourselves having been crucified with Christ. So it is Christ who lives in us. Christ who lives through us. Jesus doesn't desire that anyone would perish. He's not trying to be mean or exclusive by saying you cannot be my disciple, but what he's going for is covenant. True covenant, and he's not willing to lower the bar for that. He says this is what it costs to be in covenant. He came for covenant. He didn't come to try and lower the bar into something that was just watered down where nobody has a cost and nobody has buy-in. He came for genuine covenant. Verse 28, it says, for which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Notice this. I find these little phrases that he uses, I think he's really intentional. But he talks about desiring to build a tower. Earlier on, he said, if anyone comes to me but doesn't hate their mother and father, he cannot be my disciple. And then he says, if anyone is not willing to come after me and bear his own cross, he cannot be my disciple. Notice these words. He said, if anyone comes to me, coming to him doesn't necessarily mean you're his disciple. We've developed this mentality to say, well, we just need to come to Jesus. Yeah, we do need to come to Jesus, but that's not the finish line. We've made the door the destination. That's not what Jesus intended. He wants people to come to him, but he invites them to come after him, to take up their own cross and come after him. Those are different things. Here he talks about, in verse 28, for which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Notice he says desire to build a tower. Just because you desire something doesn't mean you're willing to pay for it. There are a lot of people that desire Jesus. But I'd propose to you there are few who are actually willing to come after him. There are a lot of people who desire a good worship service or desire to feel the tinglies of his presence, but are not willing to actually go and pay the price of being a disciple. His desire is that we would be in full covenant, being willing to pay the full price to be in a relationship with him. He goes on in verse 29, otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going out to encounter another king would not sit down first and deliberate, whether he has with 10,000 is able to meet him who comes against him with 20,000. Again, he says some specific things. When he's talking about the tower, he says, wouldn't this guy sit down and count the cost? He implies through his verbiage that sitting down is taking a step back. It's stepping out of the emotion of the moment, and it's saying, do I actually want to do this? It's similar to what you might hear Dave Ramsey recommend, that if you're going to make a purchase of an expense above a certain amount, have a certain amount of buffer time, whether that's 24 hours or a week, to say, don't buy it when everything in you feels like you want to buy it, but actually step back, count the cost, and then make a decision. It's similar to what Jesus is saying. Don't just jump into marriage on the whim of thinking that it feels really nice to have all your heart burning and on fire and everything booming. Actually recognize, do I want to pay the cost of being in a relationship with Jesus, of being a disciple of Jesus? Don't take it lightly. And what it does is as he's speaking to this crowd, it very well probably scared some people away. It very well probably made some people think twice. But I bet his desire was that people who recognized they weren't willing to pay the price one day would recognize that he's worthy of the price. He talks about this king going into battle, and if he recognized that he couldn't win the battle, sending the delegation to go seek peace. It makes me think around what Joseph was preaching about a couple chapters after the fact. Jacob is encountering his brother Esau. And Jacob had deceived his father and taken the blessing of Esau, the firstborn blessing, and Esau was not happy. But then there comes a moment a few chapters later where Esau is coming, and Jacob gets word he's got 400 men with him. He's like, this is a bad deal. This is catching up to me. And so Jacob, it makes me think of this passage that Jesus is talking about. Jacob starts sending gifts. He's like, gift after gift. He's like, go send these to Esau. I need to save my life. I can't take these 400 men. Jesus is using this illustration, and he's saying, wouldn't you, before going into battle, count the cost? Just like in the same way as we're going into battle, as we're entering into warfare, there is a cost involved. There's a cost to following Jesus, and we don't take that lightly. But he finishes in verse 33. He says, so therefore, any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Now, there are some who would take this verse and they would say, well, in order to be a Christian, we have to live dirt poor. There's too many other verses and cross-references that would dispute that. But this is what I believe it means. When we renounce all that we have, we recognize it is not mine. It's not my right. So I'm renouncing my right to all that I have because I know that it's his. I don't hold on to my life. I actually hold everything that he's placed in my hands with open hands. I've renounced it. I don't believe that to be a believer or a disciple of Jesus that you have to immediately go and sell everything and live dirt poor. But here's the thing. I believe you need to be willing if he were to call you to. Otherwise, if we're not willing to do what he calls us to, it means that we're holding on to something. We're being tight-fisted. He says, if you're not willing to renounce everything, you cannot be my disciple. That's a high bar. The reason I believe that Jesus is so blunt in this passage, so intentional about counting the cost, is not because the cost is too high. I genuinely believe that when we do what he's telling us in this, when we say, sit down and count the cost, like he said with the man building the tower, or sit down and deliberate, which might mean circling around with some advisors, deliberate whether you can go to war. When he's calling us to count the cost, it's not for the purpose that we would be amazed with how much the cost is, but I believe when we count the cost and we see Jesus for who he is, we recognize Jesus is far more valuable than the cost of giving our life. I believe one day in eternity we'll look back and recognize that this life was the blink of an eye. I believe one day as we've run the race and we finish that race and we look back, we'll be like, man, that was a small price to pay in the eyes of eternity. I think Jesus pushes people off the fence and pushes them to count the cost because that's how we actually recognize how much more valuable he is than anything that we could hold on to in this life. Let's turn for a second to Matthew 13. Jesus gave a lot of parables, a lot of stories, a lot of analogies. This is one of them, actually two of them. These are two that I think sometimes we brush over and we think, yeah, okay, I get the point. And we don't realize the intentionality that Jesus says both these parables back to back. They're only a couple verses each. But it's Matthew 13, verse 44. It says, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. Then he goes on, a different parable. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value went and sold all that he had and bought it. What I think oftentimes we miss in these two parables is they're actually opposites. We read them as if they're the same parable and we move on to the next thing, but they're actually opposites, and Jesus is intentional with that. In the first one, he says, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure. Okay, so the kingdom is treasure. The king is the treasure. Hidden in a field. A man, being each one of us, discovers that treasure, and he goes out and sells everything to buy the field that he could get the treasure. So the kingdom, including the king, is the treasure. And the man, us, is the one that sells everything to get that treasure. The next parable is the opposite. It says the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant. Now the kingdom is the person in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value, which is you, the pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it. He tells these parables back to back. The first is saying the kingdom is worth everything. Jesus is worth everything. And we're the people that get to sell all that we have to get him. Then the very next one, he says, the merchant is the kingdom, the king in search of fine pearls. And he found you a fine pearl, and he said, there is no cost too great. He was willing to pay the highest cost for you. And if we have eyes to see, we'll recognize that we're willing to pay the highest cost for him. And we get to experience value that is far above anything we could ever give of this life or of our own right. Jesus is depicting covenant through those two parables. True covenant is giving 100% of yourself, the full price, the full cost, and receiving 100% of the other person, the full price, the full cost. Jesus already paid the full cost. And he invites you to pay the full cost of following him. That when we actually look at the cost, we sit down and we calculate it, we recognize he is so much more worthy. He is so much more valuable. So we're talking about this because there is a cost involved for us going after what God has called us to go after. There is a cost involved with pursuing our city. There's a cost involved with pursuing our school district and Highline High School. But just like Anthony always used to say, there is no cost too high. There's no cost more valuable than walking in the will of God for your life. There's nothing that compares. So I want to end today by giving some context of, as we're sending teams to Highline High School, whether that be intercessors or support team members or the boots on the ground, I want to share a little bit about what the expectations or the cost of that would be. Signing up, as we're sitting before the Lord and asking God, what are you calling me to say yes to? That could be boots on the ground. That could be intercessor. That could be inner healing. That could be a house church. It could be a variety of things, right? They all play into the same vision. They're all part of the same thing that God is building. They're all intentional and valuable. But since we're embarking on something new, I want people to have a clear understanding of what they might be signing up for. If God is calling you to one of these different spots on a team that's pursuing Highline High School, what does that entail? So first, we talked about the intercessors, that each team that's going will have at least 5 intercessors praying daily. Now, I want to preface this by saying we're not just looking for the people that would already consider themselves intercessors. We believe that in this process, God is raising up people and growing people to become intercessors. So don't just think like, oh yeah, all the intercessors are the people that, pray 4 hours a day. Seek the Lord and say, God, are you calling me to grow as an intercessor? And this is what it would look like. You'll be connected to a team that has a couple people boots on the ground, a couple people that might be supporting those people on the ground. But the intercessors have 2 responsibilities. One is to pray every day for 10 to 15 minutes for those that are on their team and kids by name that they're engaging with on campus. So there'll be this communication loop where those that are engaging on campus will be sharing, hey, these are some of the kids' first names that we're engaging with. Pray for this kid, he's going through this, or pray for that kid. Whatever it might be, there might be some kids that are soft-hearted and some kids that are hard-hearted, but daily we're going to have intercessors praying for each one of those kids and each one of those team members, whether they're on the baseball team or the chess team or the after-school program or tutoring or whatever it might be. That we've got prayer and intercession, we've got cover fire on a daily basis, and that starts with 10 to 15 minutes a day praying by name for your team and the kids that are being engaged and their families. With that, there's also going to be opportunities for people to gather corporately and pray. One is going to be a house church in the evening. We'll get more details as it gets closer, but Debbie is going to be leading a house church in the evenings. Martin and Beth Barrett are going to be leading a prayer group in the morning. So whether you're a morning person or an evening person or whatever your schedule entails, there'll be opportunities for corporate prayer. There'll also even be a monthly prayer walk on campus. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for corporate prayer, but we're asking intercessors to commit to 2 corporate prayer gatherings a month. So daily praying and interceding on behalf of that team and those kids, and then twice a month gathering with other intercessors to pray and provide cover fire. Prayer is going to be so important, and in all of us, God is wanting to raise us up as men and women of prayer. But that's what that role would look like. We've got those that are going to be boots on the ground, those that are going to be serving in maybe it be a sports team, or maybe be tutoring, or maybe be an after-school program. I want to preface this first. Don't disqualify yourself based on logistical barriers that you might see. You might have already written off and been like, well, Pastor Seth, I can't get off work early. I work till 5:30. I can't be involved with stuff at Highline if it's at 3:30 or 4. Here's the thing. God can open doors that no man can shut, first of all. But imagine going to your employer and saying, hey, boss, I know I get off at 5, but I've got an opportunity to mentor kids at our local Highline High School. Can I come in early 4 other days, a half hour early, so that I can leave a couple hours early on Wednesdays? First of all, I don't know if your boss will have ever heard of someone wanting to do that, but you just might find that there's favor from the Lord, that your boss might say, great, yeah, stay a little late the other days or come a little early the other days, but that one day, go ahead and pack up early and go. You might have flexibility with your work. You might be a business owner that can say, hey, I'm just going to commit. I feel the Lord's calling me to commit to whatever this area is on Wednesdays at 3:30, and I'm just not going to book things from 3 to 5:30 every Wednesday. Whatever it is, don't let the logistics disqualify you. Seek the Lord and see what he's saying and allow him to work on your behalf and give favor. Open doors that no one can shut. But with that, there'll be the weekly engagement that you have. It might be an hour-long chess club that you're helping out with. It might be a 2-hour basketball practice on Mondays, whatever it might be. But there's that weekly engagement, plus twice a month, we're going to have discipleship for those that are engaging boots on the ground in some way, shape, or form on campus. It'll be on Tuesdays, 2 Tuesdays a month. In that time, we're looking to walk with people, so it's not just being thrown out and figure it out yourself. But there'll be opportunities to learn and grow and be discipled. Hey, how can I grow in being conversational with kids? How can I grow in asking the right question that actually elicits a deeper conversation? How can I grow in knowing how to navigate a conversation that might come up about an unexpected pregnancy? How can I navigate a situation or a conversation that involves a broken family situation? We're going to have people discipling people who are boots on the ground to say, hey, we're not doing this alone. You don't have to know everything. But we're going to train and disciple people so that if someone this year is saying, man, this is way out of my comfort zone, I've never done this before, I'm starting from ground zero, you can become a discipler this year. And you can walk with people in relationship and discipleship in order to do that. Finally, we have that support team member. That person who might not be on campus engaging with the baseball team or the after-school program or whatever it might be, but is saying, I would love to support someone who's doing that. It could be watching their kids while they're engaging on campus. It could be baked goods. It could be supporting in a variety of other ways. That person is going to be expected to just provide just general support for the boots on the ground, but then also once or twice a month getting together with the rest of the discipleship and the team in order to learn and grow. So basically, each one of the three that you have opportunity to seek the Lord on will involve some sort of weekly commitment, like I've just stated, as well as 1 or 2 discipleship engagements per month. But we get the opportunity to grow and learn together as we pursue what God's calling us, but there will be a cost. I'm not asking you to try and put just another thing on top of your plate. What I'm asking you to do is seek the Lord and see what he's telling you to say yes to, and then say no to everything else. Say no to the things that he's not calling you to take on your plate. Say no to the things that are just distractions. Say no to the things that are just taking time or space. That we'd actually go before him, we'd sit at his feet, receive his prompting for our life, and say, Jesus, give me the courage to say yes to what you're calling me to say yes to. And give me the courage to say no to the things you're not calling me to. A couple weeks ago, I finished the service with a story. I talked about a particular season of my life where God had said several months before that I was going to be ending a position that I was working, a business engagement. And I sat outside my house, and I knew something was going to change. It was the night before Thanksgiving, and I told the Lord, I said, God, I don't know why I would resign from my position at this point, but I just know you're changing the pieces. And I asked 2 things. I said, God, would you give me ears to hear your voice and the courage to do whatever you say? And then a month later, I was serving my last day. I resigned and walked away from it all. I went into the new year much similar to right now. It was 5 years ago. My church down in Arizona also did a week of prayer and fasting. I went into the week of prayer and fasting with open hands, just wondering what God would have for me. I quit without knowing what the next thing was. And I felt like the Lord was saying, don't lock yourself into a full-time engagement for 1 year. I was like, wow, that's a lot of time to not be like working a full-time job, especially in my 20s. But he said, for 1 year, don't lock into anything full-time. I could do some side things, some part-time things, but he said, I want you to not lock into anything for a full year. 6 months later, the former pastor of this church invited me to pray about being the youth and the college pastor here at Hope. I guarantee you, had I still been engaged in the business that I was engaged in, I would not even have considered it. But the Lord put me in this place where he told me to say no to some things to make me available and willing to actually consider what he was putting on my plate. But I had to say no first. Then, as you guys know, that turned into a youth and college pastor position and then the lead pastor position. That was 5 years ago. So I was back visiting home just this last week for Christmas. I was walking the same street that 5 years ago I had said, God, would you give me the ears to hear your voice and the courage to do it? And I was contemplating how much changed after I prayed that prayer. How much I didn't realize I was actually committing to when I came out to Washington. And to be honest, I was contemplating the cost of all of it. The cost of leaving my family, the cost of leaving a career path that I love, the cost of leaving what was normal, the cost of entering ministry, the cost of pastoring. There have been plenty of costs, no shortage of costs. But 5 years from that moment, I sat with the Lord and I thought, would I do it again? And there's no question. There's no question. Everything changed after I prayed that prayer, but there's no question of whether or not I would go and do it again. There's no price too high to walking in the call of God on your life. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like being able to partner with God in what He made you for. But there's a cost to it. And the point is not to try and whittle down the cost or dilute the cost in order to make it not be as pricey. The point is to recognize that He is worth the cost. He's worth everything that we could lay down, everything we could give up, anything that would cause us discomfort. He's worthy of it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. But the recognition is that even amidst the cost, even amidst everything that I maybe said no to, there were treasures along the way, blessing upon blessing that He poured out in the midst of saying yes. I left a family in Arizona, but I gained a family in Washington. He's poured out blessing upon blessing and grown me in ways that I never would have expected. I found my wife in Washington. I think sometimes we wonder why God hasn't brought breakthrough or brought certain blessings, and they were actually hidden in the yes that we didn't give Him. Imagine if I was still in Arizona saying, like, God, why haven't you brought me my wife? Why haven't you brought me the one? And He was saying, it was woven into the yes that you didn't give me. He wants to pour out blessing upon blessing. He's given us every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places, but it doesn't mean that there won't be a cost to it. And I'm telling you today, the cost is worth it. He is worth it. Go ahead and stand with me. I'm inviting you this week to make time to sit at His feet. I'm inviting you to pray that same thing. God, would you give me ears to hear your voice and the courage to do it? I'm inviting you to take time to ask God, what are you calling me to say yes to? And then I'm giving you the permission to say no to the other things. It might be hard to say no. It might be uncomfortable to say no to things that have become really comfortable or that you really like. Or it might be uncomfortable to say no if you know that someone else might be disappointed by it. But there's nothing more valuable than walking in the will of God for your life. Sit at His feet. Receive the marching orders. Count the cost. Say yes to what He's calling you to say yes to. Say no in the areas that you need to say no in order to protect that yes. And I guarantee you, you won't regret it when all is said and done. When you run the race and you come to the finish line and you look back and think, I gave my life as a living sacrifice and Jesus was worth it. Pray with me. God, I thank you that we have the opportunity to partner with you. We have the opportunity to partner with our dad. Jesus, I thank you that you don't lower the bar, but instead you call us up and you partner with us to the high bar of covenant with you. Covenant that's so much more valuable than being an acquaintance with you. Covenant that's so much more powerful than just a church service once a week. Being in covenant in that posture of having received everything that you paid for me, and in return, getting to give everything to you. Would you come and would you speak to our hearts this week? Would you give us ears to hear your voice, to truly desire to hear your voice? Give us discernment to recognize your voice from all the other voices, all the other things, all the other noise in life, all the other opinions or pressures. We want to hear your voice, Jesus. And I pray for each one in this room, each one that's listening online, that upon hearing your voice, you'd pour out your Spirit, that we'd be bold to go where you call, knowing that there's nothing like it, that you are worthy of every cost of following you. We don't just want to be people that desire you. We want to be people who are willing to actually follow in your footsteps. So would you come and speak? Come and reveal what you're calling us to say yes to in this year. And give us the courage to say no to the other things, to make space for you to do what you want to do. I release your blessing and your favor for deep encounter with you this week as we make room for you to do all that